The gunshot echoed through the warehouse, and Imani watched in horror as Go Min-seok's body jerked backward, crimson blooming across his white shirt. His legs buckled beneath him, and he crumpled to the concrete floor with a sickening thud that would haunt her forever. Min-seok! Her scream tore through the chaos as she broke free from the guard restraining her, her nursing scrubs catching on metal as she ran toward him. His dark eyes found hers through the haze of pain, blood trickling from the corner of his mouth. "Stay back," he commanded, his voice still carrying that iron authority, even as his hand trembled against the wound in his spine. "Get out of here, Imani. Now." But she was already kneeling beside him, her hands, trained hands that had sutured wounds and saved lives, pressing against the injury with desperate pressure. His blood was warm and too much of it, soaking through her fingers. "I'm not leaving you," she whispered fiercely, tears streaming down her brown cheeks. "Not now. Not ever." His fingers wrapped around her wrist with surprising strength. "You don't understand what you're saying." "I understand perfectly." She met his gaze, unflinching. "I love you, Min-seok, and I'm not going anywhere." 3 months earlier, Imani Washington had learned long ago that life rarely offered second chances, which was why she refused to waste the ones she had. At 28, she worked double shifts as a registered nurse at Chicago's Mercy General Hospital, her medium brown skin perpetually exhausted beneath the fluorescent lights, her natural coils pulled back into a practical bun that had long since stopped being stylish and became purely functional. The bags under her almond-shaped eyes told stories of 16-hour days and dreams deferred, but her hands remained steady, her smile genuine for every patient who needed it, even when she had nothing left to give. "Imani, you've got a VIP transfer coming in from O'Hare," her supervisor Margaret announced, clipboard in hand. "Private medical transport, trauma patient from Seoul, spinal injury, partial paralysis. He's being admitted to the penthouse suite." Imani's eyebrows rose. Mercy General's penthouse suite cost more per night than she made in 2 weeks. "What's the prognosis?" "Uncertain. The Korean doctors stabilized him, but the damage is significant. Lower spine, some nerve damage. He may regain partial mobility with therapy or—" Margaret's expression finished the sentence. "He specifically requested a private nurse for overnight shifts. You're my best, and you could use the hazard pay." Hazard pay. The word sent a small thrill of hope through Imani's chest. She'd been saving for her nursing practitioner certification for 3 years, picking up every overtime shift she could find. This could cut months off her timeline. "I'll take it," she said without hesitation. 2 hours later, Imani stood outside the penthouse suite, medical chart in hand, taking a steadying breath. Through the door, she could hear raised voices, sharp, rapid Korean punctuated by angry English. "Don't need a goddamn babysitter, J1. You can barely move without assistance, young Nim. Stop being stubborn. Get out." The command was ice-cold, absolute. Imani heard footsteps approaching and stepped aside as the door swung open. A younger Korean man in an expensive suit emerged, his jaw tight with frustration. He glanced at Imani, taking in her scrubs and medical bag. "Good luck," he muttered in English, his accent slight. "He's in a mood. When isn't he?" The unspoken words hung in the air as he strode past. Imani knocked twice, firm and professional. "Mr. Go? I'm Imani Washington, your nurse for the overnight shift." Silence. Then, "I didn't ask for a nurse." His English was flawless, his voice deep and cutting. Imani pushed the door open anyway, stepping into opulence that made her studio apartment look like a broom closet. Floor-to-ceiling windows overlooked the Chicago skyline. The furniture was Italian leather, and the hospital bed had been positioned near the window, a prison with a view. In that bed sat Go Min-seok. Imani had seen his photo in the chart, but nothing prepared her for the reality of him. Even confined to bed, even with the stark hospital gown and the various monitors attached to his body, he radiated authority. His jet-black hair was slightly disheveled, falling across a face that could have been carved from marble. Sharp cheekbones, a strong jaw, eyes so dark they seemed to absorb light rather than reflect it. His shoulders were broad, his arms corded with muscle, that spoke of a man who had been powerful before injury stole his strength. A thin scar traced his left eyebrow, another marked his jawline. These were not surgical scars. "Mr. Go," Imani said calmly, setting her bag down and pulling out her tablet. "I understand you didn't request nursing care, but hospital policy requires—" "I don't care about policy." His eyes fixed on her with laser intensity. "I have people for this. Tell your supervisor I'm declining the service." Unfortunately, that's not possible. Imani moved to the monitors, checking his vitals with practiced efficiency. You're a trauma patient with spinal injury. Medical supervision is non-negotiable for the first 2 weeks. His jaw clenched. Then send someone else. Also, not possible. I'm assigned to your case. She met his gaze directly, refusing to be intimidated. So we can either work together, or we can make both our lives difficult. Your choice, Mr. Go. Something flickered in his dark eyes. Surprise, maybe, or grudging respect. Most people, Imani suspected, didn't stand up to Go Min Seok. You're not afraid, he observed. Should I be? Most people are. Imani shrugged, making a notation on his chart. I've dealt with gang members high on PCP, drunk drivers who killed families, and a guy who tried to stab me with a bedpan. Unless you're planning something similar, I think I'll manage. The corner of his mouth twitched. Not quite a smile, but close. A bedpan. He had good aim. I have fast reflexes. She pulled a chair closer to the bed, sitting down so they were eye level. Look, Mr. Go, I know this situation isn't what you want, but I'm here to help you heal, not to judge or pity you. I need to check your sensation and motor function, change your dressings, and make sure you're comfortable. That's it. Nothing more, nothing less. He studied her for a long moment, his expression unreadable. Imani held his gaze, keeping her posture relaxed and professional. She'd learned early in her nursing career that showing fear invited trouble, but showing respect opened doors. Fine, he said finally, but I have rules. I'm listening. 1. You don't touch me without warning. 2. You don't ask personal questions. 3. If I tell you to leave, you leave. His voice was hard, brooking no argument. Can you follow those rules, Nurse Washington? Imani, she corrected. And yes, I can follow those rules, but I have one of my own. His eyebrow arched. Oh, you don't lie to me about your pain levels or symptoms. If something hurts, if something feels wrong, you tell me immediately. Your recovery depends on honest communication. She pulled out her blood pressure cuff. Deal? Min Seok's eyes narrowed, as if he was trying to solve a puzzle he hadn't encountered before. Then slowly, he nodded. Deal. Imani stood, snapping on latex gloves. Good. Now I need to check your lower extremities. This might be uncomfortable. As she worked, she was acutely aware of his gaze following her every movement. His body was a battlefield. Old scars cross-hatched his torso, some from blades, others that looked like burns. The fresh surgical incisions along his lower spine were healing well, but the real damage was internal. Can you feel this? She pressed gently on his left thigh. Barely. Pressure, but no real sensation. And here, his calf. Nothing. Imani made careful notes, her heart aching despite her professional detachment. He was young, maybe 35, and his body told stories of violence survived. Now he faced a different battle, one that couldn't be won with strength or intimidation. The doctors say I might walk again, Min Seok said suddenly, his voice flat. They're lying, aren't they? Imani paused, meeting his eyes. He deserved honesty. They're not lying. The damage to your spine is significant, but it's not complete. You have partial sensation, which means the neural pathways aren't severed, just damaged. With aggressive physical therapy, proper care and time, you could regain significant mobility. She set down her tablet. But it won't be easy and there are no guarantees. So there's a chance I'll spend the rest of my life in a wheelchair. Yes, there's also a chance you'll walk out of here on your own 2 feet. Imani pulled off her gloves, disposing of them properly. The question is, which possibility are you going to focus on? Min Seok's laugh was bitter. You sound like a motivational poster. I sound like someone who's seen miracles happen when patients refuse to give up. She checked his IV line, adjusting the flow rate. I've also seen people with minor injuries never recover because they decided they couldn't before they even tried. You don't know anything about me, he said coldly. You're right. I don't. Imani gathered her supplies, preparing to document everything in his file. But I know that whoever shot you wanted you dead, and you're still here. That takes strength. The question is whether you're strong enough to do the harder thing, heal. She felt his stare boring into her back as she worked. The silence stretched, heavy with unspoken tension. They told you I was shot, he finally said. Not a question. Your chart mentions a gunshot wound. I'm a nurse, not a detective. My job is to help you recover, not investigate how you got injured. Imani turned back to face him. Like I said, I'm not here to judge. Something in his expression shifted, the ice cracking just slightly. You're different from the others they sent. I'll take that as a compliment. It wasn't meant as one. Despite herself, Imani smiled. I know. The night wore on. Imani performed her duties with quiet efficiency, checking vitals, administering medication, helping him adjust position to prevent bed sores. Min Seok was a difficult patient, proud and resistant to assistance, but she'd dealt with worse. What surprised her was his intelligence, the way he watched and absorbed everything, like he was cataloguing her routines and responses. Around 3 a.m., she found him staring out the window at the city lights, his jaw tight with pain he refused to acknowledge. When's your next dose of pain medication? She asked softly. Don't need it. Your heart rate is elevated, your breathing is shallow, and you're gripping that bedrail hard enough to break it. Imani moved closer. You promised not to lie about pain. His eyes flashed. I didn't promise anything. Actually, you agreed to a deal. Honest communication, remember? She pulled up his medication schedule. You're an hour overdue. There's no award for suffering unnecessarily, Mr. Go. Min Seok, he corrected, his voice rough. If I'm supposed to call you Imani, then you call me Min Seok. It felt like a concession, a tiny opening in his armor. Imani prepared the injection, her movements gentle as she administered the medication through his IV port. This will help, she murmured. Give it 10 minutes. They waited in silence, and gradually, she saw his shoulders relax, the tension bleeding out of his frame. His eyes drifted closed, dark lashes casting shadows on his cheekbones. Thank you, he whispered, so quietly she almost missed it. Imani's heart clenched unexpectedly. In that moment he looked vulnerable, human, not the cold, commanding figure who'd greeted her hours ago. You're welcome, she replied, just as softly. When she checked on him again 20 minutes later, he was asleep, his breathing deep and even. Imani stood by his bedside longer than necessary, studying the man who was somehow both wounded and dangerous, broken and still fighting. She had no idea that this was the moment everything changed, that Go Min Seok would become more than just a patient, that he would become the most important person in her world, and she in his. All she knew was that something about him pulled at her in ways she didn't understand, and probably shouldn't explore. But Imani had never been good at staying away from things that scared her. Over the next 2 weeks, Imani fell into a rhythm with Min Seok that was equal parts challenging and strangely comfortable. He remained difficult, stubborn, proud, resistant to help, but she learned his patterns. She learned that he hated being helpless more than he hated the pain, that he pushed himself too hard during physical therapy, then refused pain medication because he considered it weakness, that he spoke Korean when he was frustrated, rapid-fire conversations on his phone that made his jaw clench and his eyes go cold. She also learned softer things, that he liked his coffee black and strong the way it was made in Seoul, that he read voraciously, business journals, philosophy, Korean literature in Hangul, that sometimes late at night when he thought she wasn't looking, he stared at his legs with an expression of such profound loss it made her chest ache. Tell me about your family, Imani asked one night during her routine check, breaking their unspoken rule about personal questions. Min Seok's eyes snapped to hers, sharp with warning. That's not part of your job. You're right, I'm just curious. She checked his blood pressure, noting the elevated reading. You have visitors, business associates, I assume, but no family, no parents, no siblings, no... Wife? His smile was cold. No wife. Girlfriend? Why do you want to know? He tilted his head, studying her with that unsettling intensity. Are you interested, Nurse Washington? Heat flooded Imani's cheeks, and she silently cursed her brown skin for not hiding the blush better. I'm interested in understanding my patient's support system. Social connections impact recovery rates. Is that what the medical journals say? Among other things. She made a notation on his chart, refusing to look at him. So, do you have someone? I had a fiancé, he said, his voice carefully neutral. Past tense. She left 3 days after the shooting, when she realized I might not walk again. Imani's head jerked up. She what? You heard me. Min Seok's expression was unreadable, but his eyes betrayed something raw. Apparently she signed up to marry a powerful man, not a crippled one. Her words, not mine. Rage, hot and unexpected, surged through Imani's chest. She struggled for words that wouldn't violate professional boundaries. I'm sorry. That's incredibly unfair. Life is unfair. He shrugged, the gesture stiff. She made a practical choice. My world is dangerous, and I can't protect her anymore. Can't protect anyone." The bitterness in his voice cut deeper than any scalpel. Imani set down her tablet, moving closer to his bedside. "You're still the same person," she said firmly. "Your value isn't determined by whether you can walk. In my world, it is." Min Seok's laugh was harsh. "Respect is built on power, and power requires strength. A man who can't even stand without assistance is useless. That's ridiculous. It's reality." His eyes locked onto hers. "You work in a hospital, Imani. You see victims every day, people destroyed by men like me. You want to know what I did before the shooting? I ran one of the largest Korean organized crime syndicates in Chicago. I controlled territories, managed illegal operations, and yes, I hurt people who crossed me." The confession hung between them, heavy with implication. Imani should have been shocked, should have requested reassignment immediately. But she'd suspected the truth from the beginning. The expensive suits, the guards, the way people addressed him with deference that bordered on fear. "I know who you are," she said quietly. Min Seok's eyes widened fractionally. "You know, I'm not an idiot, and I grew up on the South Side. I know what organized crime looks like." Imani crossed her arms. "But that doesn't change my job. I'm here to help you heal, not judge your life choices. Most people would run. I'm not most people." She picked up his chart again, her hands steady despite the racing of her heart. "Now we need to discuss your physical therapy schedule. Dr. Kim wants you starting intensive sessions next week." "Imani," his voice stopped her mid-sentence. "Why aren't you afraid of me?" She considered the question carefully, trying to articulate something she barely understood herself. "Because I see who you are, under all the posturing. You're in pain, you're scared, and you're fighting like hell to maintain control of a situation that's completely out of your control." She met his gaze directly. "That doesn't make you dangerous. It makes you human." For a long moment, Min Seok just stared at her. Then, slowly, some of the ice in his expression melted. "You're either very brave or very foolish," he murmured. "Probably both." Imani smiled slightly. "Now about that physical therapy." The door burst open, and 3 men in dark suits entered without knocking. Imani recognized them as Min Seok's usual visitors, but there was an urgency in their movements that set her nerves on edge. "Kyungnim, we have a problem," the one she knew as Jaewon said in rapid Korean, his eyes flicking to Imani with obvious discomfort. Min Seok's entire demeanor changed instantly. The vulnerable man vanished, replaced by the cold authority she'd glimpsed that first night. "English, Jaewon. Show some respect." Jaewon's jaw tightened. "The Kozlov Bratva is making moves on our South Side territory. They know about your condition, they're testing boundaries." "How bad?" "2 of our collection sites hit last night. They left calling cards." Jaewon pulled out his phone, showing Min Seok something that made his expression darken dangerously. "They're sending a message." Imani backed toward the door, recognizing this was not a conversation she should witness. But Min Seok's voice stopped her. "Stay." She froze. "I should give you privacy." "I said stay." His tone left no room for argument. He turned back to Jaewon. "What's our response protocol?" "We can handle it, Hyungnim. You focus on recovery. I'm still in charge." Min Seok's voice could have cut glass. "Arrange a meeting. Neutral ground, public location. I want to send a message that I'm still very much alive and very much in control." "You can't even stand..." Jaewon stopped abruptly at Min Seok's murderous glare. "It's too dangerous. Everything is dangerous. That's our business." Min Seok's fingers drummed against the bedrail, a predator calculating odds. "The Kozlov Bratva respect strength. They need to see that I'm not vulnerable." "You are vulnerable," Imani interjected before she could stop herself. All eyes turned to her. She straightened her spine, refusing to back down. "You're recovering from major trauma. Stress will slow your healing, and if this meeting goes wrong, if there's violence, you can't defend yourself." "She's right," Jaewon said, surprising everyone. "Let me handle this, Hyungnim. You've trained us for this." Min Seok's jaw clenched, frustration and impotent rage warring across his features. Imani recognized that look, the desperate need to prove himself still powerful, still relevant, still worthy of respect. "Give us a moment," Min Seok said to his men. It wasn't a request. They filed out, leaving Imani alone with her patient. The silence stretched taut. "You think I'm being stupid," he said finally. "I think you're terrified that if you show weakness, you'll lose everything." Imani moved back to his bedside, her voice gentle. "But pushing yourself before you're ready won't prove your strength. It'll just hurt you more. You don't understand what's at stake. Then explain it to me." Min Seok's eyes searched hers, as if weighing how much truth to share. In my world, perception is reality. If my rivals believe I'm weak, they'll move against me. They'll take my territory, turn my people, dismantle everything I've built. His hands fisted in the sheets. I'll become irrelevant, forgotten. Is that what you're really afraid of? Imani asked softly, being forgotten. The question struck something deep. She saw it in the way his breath caught, the way his eyes went distant. My father was a powerful man, Min-seok said, his voice barely above a whisper. He built our organization from nothing, commanded respect from Seoul to Chicago. When he got sick, when cancer made him weak, they turned on him like wolves. Allies became enemies. Friends became betrayers. He died not in glory but in shame, watching everything he built crumble. Imani's heart clenched. And you think that's your fate? I know it is. Unless I prove I'm still strong enough to lead. She sat down on the edge of his bed, a breach of professional boundaries she couldn't bring herself to care about. Min-seok, listen to me. True strength isn't about never showing weakness. It's about fighting through weakness to become stronger. She placed her hand over his, the first time she'd touched him without a medical reason. You survived a gunshot to the spine. You're relearning your body. You're facing the hardest battle of your life, and you're still here, still fighting. That is strength. His eyes locked onto their joined hands, then lifted to her face. Something in his expression made her breath catch, raw, unguarded emotion she'd never seen from him before. Why do you care? He asked hoarsely. Because, Imani paused, uncertain how to answer. Because you're my patient. Because I've seen what happens when people give up. Because... She trailed off, unable to finish. Because? Min-seok prompted, his voice rough. Because you matter. Because somewhere in the past 2 weeks you've become more than just a patient to me. Because when I see you in pain, my chest aches in ways that have nothing to do with professional concern. But she couldn't say those things. Shouldn't even think them. Because everyone deserves someone in their corner, she finished lamely. Min-seok's fingers curled around hers, his grip surprisingly strong. You're in my corner? Always. The word escaped before she could stop it, a promise she had no business making. But looking into his dark eyes, feeling the warmth of his hand in hers, Imani knew she meant it. Whatever happened next, wherever this strange connection led, she was committed, and that should have terrified her. Instead, it felt like coming home. The incident with the Kozlov Bratva changed something fundamental between them. Min-seok became different. Not softer, exactly, but more open. He started asking Imani about her life, where she grew up, why she became a nurse, what she did when she wasn't working. She found herself sharing things she rarely told anyone. Her childhood on the South Side, her grandmother's collard greens and gospel music, her father who'd left when she was 8, her mother who'd worked 3 jobs to keep them afloat. She sounds like a strong woman, Min-seok observed one evening. The strongest. Imani smiled, checking his vitals. She wanted me to be a doctor, but I couldn't afford medical school. Nursing was the practical choice. You have regrets? Sometimes. But I love what I do. There's something powerful about being there when people are most vulnerable, helping them through their worst moments. She glanced at him. Like now. I'm not vulnerable, he said automatically. Right. The man who needed help using the bathroom this morning is the picture of invincibility. His eyes flashed with embarrassment and anger. That was human. You needed help, and I provided it. No shame, Min-seok. Imani sat down in her usual chair. Your ego is going to be the biggest obstacle to your recovery. My ego built an empire, and it might prevent you from walking again if you don't let it go. She pulled out her tablet. Dr. Kim is pleased with your progress. You're regaining sensation faster than expected. If you keep working this hard in physical therapy, you might be standing with assistants in another month. Something fierce and hopeful flashed across his face before he could hide it. A month? Maybe less if you follow instructions and stop trying to do everything yourself. Imani made a notation, which means actually using the wheelchair when you need it, accepting help without complaint, and, most importantly, not sneaking out of bed at night to test your legs. Min-seok had the grace to look chagrined. You knew about that? I'm your nurse. I know everything. She gave him a pointed look, including the fact that you've been skipping pain medication to prove you're tough. I don't need bullshit. The curse slipped out, surprising them both. Imani rarely swore, especially not with patients. Pain slows healing. It creates stress hormones that impede recovery. You want to prove you're strong? Then be smart enough to accept appropriate medical care. Min Seok stared at her, then slowly smiled, a real smile, transforming his harsh features into something almost beautiful. You're bossy. I'm right. There's a difference. But Imani couldn't help smiling back. The moment stretched, charged with something that made her skin prickle. His eyes dipped to her mouth, lingering, before snapping back to her eyes with obvious effort. You should go home, he said abruptly. Your shift ended an hour ago. I was just finishing up. Imani, go home. His voice was gentle but firm. You work too much. Says the man who runs a criminal organization from a hospital bed. I'm serious. When's the last time you did something for yourself, saw friends, went out? The questions made her uncomfortable because they highlighted a truth she preferred to ignore. She had no life outside work. Her friends had drifted away over the years, worn down by cancelled plans and missed calls. Her last relationship had ended 18 months ago when her ex-boyfriend complained she loved her patients more than him. He hadn't been entirely wrong. I'm fine, she said, standing to avoid his too perceptive gaze. You're exhausted, I can see it. Min Seok's hand shot out, catching her wrist with surprising speed. The touch sent electricity racing up her arm. Thank you for everything, but you need to take care of yourself too. Imani looked down at his hand on her wrist. Strong, warm, careful not to grip too hard. When had he stopped being just a patient? When had this become personal? I'll go, she whispered. But I'll be back tomorrow night. I know. His thumb brushed over her pulse point, a touch so gentle it made her breath catch. I'll be waiting. The words felt loaded with meaning beyond the literal. Imani pulled away reluctantly, gathering her things with hands that trembled slightly. Good night, Min Seok. Good night, Imani. She felt his eyes on her all the way to the door. 3 days later, disaster struck. Imani arrived for her shift to find Min Seok's room in chaos. Medical staff swarmed around his bed, and she could hear his voice, sharp with pain, shouting in Korean. She pushed through the crowd, her heart in her throat. What happened? She demanded. Dr. Kim looked up, relief crossing his face. Nurse Washington. Good, we need you. He's refusing treatment and— Everyone out, Imani commanded, using her best nurse voice. Now, I'll handle this. The staff hesitated, but Dr. Kim nodded. You have 5 minutes. If he doesn't cooperate, we're sedating him. They filed out, leaving Imani alone with Min Seok. He was shirtless, his torso sheened with sweat, his hands gripping the bed rails so hard his knuckles had gone white. His face was twisted with agony. Hey, Imani said softly, approaching slowly. Talk to me. What's wrong? Nothing, he ground out through clenched teeth. I don't need— A spasm of pain cut off the words, and he doubled over with a strangled sound. Imani moved quickly, her hands gentle but efficient as she examined him. The moment she touched his lower back, he flinched violently. Nerve pain, she diagnosed immediately. Severe spasms. Min Seok, you need medication. No. His eyes were wild, unfocused. No drugs. I can't. I need to stay alert. You're going to hurt yourself worse if you don't let me help. She cupped his face, forcing him to look at her. I know you're scared. I know you hate feeling out of control. But I promise you, I will not let anything happen to you. Trust me. His eyes searched hers, desperate and afraid in ways she'd never seen. Imani, trust me, she repeated firmly. Something in him broke. He nodded, a tiny movement, and sagged against the pillows. Imani worked quickly, administering muscle relaxants and adjusting his position to minimize pressure on the affected nerves. She stayed close, murmuring reassurance, her hand stroking his sweat-dampened hair. Gradually, the spasms eased. His breathing slowed, deepened, the lines of agony etching his face smoothed. Better? She asked softly. Yes. His hand found hers, gripping it like a lifeline. Don't leave. I'm not going anywhere. She settled into the chair beside his bed, their fingers still intertwined. Sleep. I'll be right here. Promise? I promise. His eyes drifted closed, his breathing evening out. But he didn't release her hand, and Imani didn't try to pull away. She sat there for hours watching him sleep, feeling the steady pulse in his wrist against her fingers. This was dangerous. She knew it. Feeling this much for a patient, for a man involved in organized crime, a man whose world was violence and secrets, was professional suicide, personal suicide. But as she watched Min Seok sleep, his face finally peaceful, Imani couldn't bring herself to care. She was falling for him, had been falling for weeks, if she was honest. And there wasn't a damn thing she could do to stop it. When he woke 3 hours later, His eyes found her immediately. You stayed. I told you I would. Why? The question was raw, vulnerable. Why do you keep staying? You could request reassignment. Work with easier patients, but you keep coming back. Imani swallowed hard, trying to find the right words. Because when I'm with you, I feel alive. Like I matter beyond just my job, like I'm seen. The confession spilled out before she could stop it. You make me feel things I shouldn't feel. And I know this is complicated and probably impossible, but I'm falling in love with you, Min Seok interrupted, his voice steady and sure. I've been falling since that first night when you refused to be intimidated, when you saw past the exterior to the man underneath. His grip on her hand tightened. I know I have no right. I know I'm damaged and dangerous and everything you should avoid. But I need you to know. You are the best thing that's happened to me in years, maybe ever. Imani's breath caught. Her heart hammered so hard, she thought it might break through her ribs. Min Seok, you don't have to say anything. I just needed you to know. His thumb stroked over her knuckles, a touch so tender it made her eyes sting. Whatever you decide, whatever you want from this or don't want, I'll respect it. But hiding how I feel from you was killing me. Tears spilled down Imani's cheeks. She should pull away, should maintain professional boundaries, should protect her heart from the inevitable disaster this would become. Instead, she leaned forward and pressed her lips to his. The kiss was soft, tentative, a question and an answer all at once. Min Seok made a sound low in his throat, his free hand coming up to cup the back of her head, fingers tangling in her natural curls. The kiss deepened, weeks of tension and denied attraction finally finding release. When they finally broke apart, both breathing hard, Min Seok rested his forehead against hers. Imani, he whispered, what are we doing? Something stupid, she replied, her voice shaking. Something wonderful, something terrifying. All of the above. Definitely all of the above. She pulled back enough to meet his eyes. I don't know how this works. I don't know if this can work, but I want to try, even knowing what I am, what my life entails. I'm not naive, Min Seok. I know your world is dangerous. I know loving you might destroy me. She cupped his face, her thumbs brushing over his sharp cheekbones. But not loving you feels worse. His smile was brilliant, transforming his entire face. You love me? God help me, yes. He kissed her again, deeper this time, possessive and claiming. When they finally broke apart, both were breathless. We're going to figure this out, Min Seok promised. I don't know how yet, but I'm not letting you go. You're mine now, Imani, and I protect what's mine. The words should have sounded controlling. Instead, they felt like a vow. Imani leaned into his embrace, letting herself be held, feeling safer than she had in years. She had no idea that in 3 weeks, everything would fall apart, that Min Seok's enemies would discover his weakness, and that her name was Imani. The next 2 weeks were the happiest and most terrifying of Imani's life. She and Min Seok kept their relationship hidden, from the hospital, from his organization, from everyone who might use it against them. Their time together was stolen moments, late-night conversations that stretched past her shift, kisses exchanged when no one was watching, whispered confessions in the dark. Min Seok's recovery accelerated. With motivation beyond mere pride, he threw himself into physical therapy with single-minded determination. Soon he was standing with assistance, taking his first halting steps with a walker, pushing through pain that would have broken lesser men. You're incredible, Imani told him one night, watching him take 3 steps unaided before his legs began to shake. I have motivation, he replied, sinking back into the wheelchair with a grimace. I want to be able to stand on my own 2 feet when I take you on a proper date. Her heart melted. We don't need to go anywhere fancy. You deserve fancy. You deserve everything. He pulled her down onto his lap, his arms strong around her waist. I want to take you to my favorite restaurant, show you off, treat you the way you should be treated. I don't need expensive restaurants, Min Seok. I just need you. He kissed her softly, reverently. You have me. For as long as you want me. Forever then. Forever it is. But forever shattered on a Thursday night when Imani arrived for her shift to find Min Seok's room empty. Panic sliced through her. She raced to the nurse's station. Where's Mr. Go? Margaret looked up, confused. He checked himself out 2 hours ago, against medical advice, but we couldn't stop him. His people came and... Imani didn't wait to hear the rest. She grabbed her phone, calling Min Seok's number. It rang once, twice, 3 times. Imani! His voice was strained. I'm sorry, I didn't want you to find out this way. What's going on? Where are you? I can't tell you. It's not safe. Min Seok, talk to me. Fear made her voice sharp. The Kozlov Bratva took one of my men. They're demanding a meeting, me in person, or they start executing hostages. His breathing was labored. I have to go. I can't let my people die because of my weakness. You're not ready. You can barely walk. I don't have a choice. His voice was gentle but firm. This is my responsibility, Imani. My world. I can't hide behind hospital walls forever. Then let me come with you. Absolutely not. The command was sharp. You stay away from this. Stay safe. I couldn't bear it if something happened to you because of me. And I can't bear the thought of losing you. Tears streamed down her face. Min Seok, please, don't do this. I love you, Imani. Remember that, no matter what happens. His voice cracked. You made me believe I could be more than just power and violence. You made me want to be better. That's a gift I'll carry with me always. Don't talk like you're saying goodbye. I have to go. Jaewon is waiting. I'm sorry, Sarang. I'm so sorry. The line went dead. Imani stared at her phone, her mind racing. She pulled up her rideshare app with shaking hands, her nursing instincts screaming that something was terribly wrong. Min Seok wasn't ready for confrontation. If there was violence, if he had to move quickly, his body would fail him. He would die. She couldn't let that happen. 20 minutes later, Imani stood outside an abandoned warehouse on Chicago's industrial South Side, her heart pounding. She could hear voices inside, harsh, argumentative. She recognized Min Seok's smooth baritone, speaking in English now. Agreement was neutral ground. This doesn't look neutral, Kozlov. A laugh, cold and cruel. Agreements are for equals. You are not my equal anymore, Korean. You are weak, broken. I'm still breathing. That should concern you. Brave words from a man who can barely stand. Imani couldn't wait any longer. She pushed through the warehouse door, her eyes adjusting to the dim light. What she saw made her blood run cold. Min Seok stood, barely, in the center of the space, his hand gripping a metal railing for support. Around him stood a dozen armed men, their weapons drawn. Across from him, a broad man with ice-blue eyes and a cruel smile held a gun pointed directly at Min Seok's chest. Imani! Min Seok's voice was horrified. What are you? Get out of here! But it was too late. Two of Kozlov's men grabbed her, dragging her forward. Min Seok's face went white with rage and fear. Let her go, he commanded, his voice deadly. She has nothing to do with this. Kozlov's smile widened. Oh, but she does. This is your weakness, go. Not your legs, her. He gestured at Imani with his gun. Beautiful girl, I can see why you kept her secret, but secrets never stay buried, do they? I swear to God, if you touch her, you'll what? You can barely move. Kozlov circled Min Seok like a predator. I could kill her right now and you couldn't stop me. Terror clawed at Imani's throat, but she forced herself to stay calm. Min Seok's eyes met hers, pleading and desperate. I'm sorry, he mouthed. She shook her head slightly. Not your fault. Here's what's going to happen, Kozlov announced. You're going to sign over your South Side territories, all of them, and in exchange I let you and your pretty nurse walk out of here alive. And if I refuse, then I shoot you both, and take the territories anyway. Kozlov shrugged. Your choice, Korean. Min Seok's jaw clenched. Imani could see the calculation in his eyes, weighing options, looking for angles. But there were too many guns, too many men. Even if he'd been at full strength, the odds were impossible. Fine, Min Seok said finally, the word tasting like poison. I'll sign. Good boy. Kozlov pulled out a document, clearly prepared in advance. Right here. What happened next occurred in seconds. Jaewon burst through a side door with a dozen armed men. Kozlov's crew spun, weapons rising. Someone screamed, and Kozlov, realizing he was outmaneuvered, made a final desperate move. He fired. The gunshot echoed through the warehouse, and Min Seok's body jerked backward, crimson blooming across his white shirt. Everything after that became a blur of horror and adrenaline. Imani screamed, breaking free from her captors as gunfire erupted around them. She ran toward Min Seok as he crumpled to the concrete, his legs finally betraying him completely. Min Seok! She fell to her knees beside him, her hands already moving with trained precision. Stay with me. Look at me. His dark eyes found hers, clouded with pain. Blood poured from the wound in his lower back. Another injury to his spine, this one potentially fatal. Get out, he gasped. Imani, run. I'm not leaving you. Her hands pressed against the wound, applying pressure even as blood soaked through her fingers. Not now, not ever. Around them the battle raged. She heard Jae-won shouting orders, heard bodies hitting the floor, but her entire world had narrowed to Min-seok's face, to the way his breathing was becoming labored, to the way his skin was going pale. "I love you," he whispered. "I'm sorry. I'm so sorry for bringing you into this. Stop apologizing and stay awake." Tears streamed down her face. "You don't get to die on me, Go Min-seok. You promised me forever, and I'm holding you to it." "Forever," he echoed, his voice fading. "Sounds nice." "Min-seok, no, stay with me." She cupped his face with bloody hands. "Please, please don't leave me. I need you. Do you hear me? I need you." His eyes fluttered closed. "Someone call an ambulance!" Imani screamed, her voice breaking. "Now!" Jae-won appeared beside her, his face pale. "They're coming! Young-nim, hold on, just hold on!" But Min-seok had gone still, too still. His breathing was shallow, irregular. Imani felt for his pulse, finding it weak and thready. "No, no, no," she chanted, pressing harder against the wound even though she knew it was likely futile. "You don't get to do this. You don't get to make me love you and then leave. That's not how this works." In the distance, sirens wailed. Help was coming. But as Imani looked at Min-seok's pale, still face, she wondered if it would be too late. "I love you," she whispered against his temple. "Come back to me. Please come back." She didn't know if he could hear her. She didn't know if he would survive. All she knew was that her world had shattered, and the only person who could piece it back together was bleeding out in her arms. The ambulance ride to Mercy General was the longest 20 minutes of Imani's life. She refused to leave Min-seok's side, her hand still pressed against his wound, her nursing training taking over even as her heart was breaking. The paramedics worked around her, hooking up IVs, monitoring vitals, shouting medical jargon that she translated automatically. "Blood pressure dropping. 70/40. We're losing him." "No." Imani's voice was steel. "You're not losing him. Increase fluids, prepare blood transfusion, and someone page Dr. Kim. Tell him it's Min-seok, and we need him in surgery now." The paramedic stared at her. "Ma'am, you need to. I'm a registered nurse at Mercy. This is my patient. Do what I say." Something in her tone made him obey. By the time they reached the hospital, Min-seok's vitals had stabilized marginally. Not good, but better. Enough to give him a fighting chance. Dr. Kim met them at the emergency entrance, his expression grim. "What happened?" "Gunshot wound to the lower spine, secondary trauma to the same area as his previous injury." Imani's voice was clinical, detached, the only way she could function. "He needs immediate surgery to remove the bullet and repair any additional nerve damage." "Imani..." Dr. Kim's eyes were kind. "You know I can't let you in the OR. You're too close to this." "I know." Her hands shook as she finally stepped back, letting the surgical team take over. "Just save him, please. We'll do everything we can." They wheeled Min-seok away, and Imani collapsed against the wall, her legs finally giving out. She slid to the floor, her scrubs soaked with his blood, her hands stained crimson. Jae-won appeared beside her, sinking down to sit on the floor at her side. His expensive suit was ruined, streaked with dirt and blood. "He'll make it," Jae-won said quietly. "Young-nim is too stubborn to die. He was shot twice in the same spot." Imani's voice was hollow. "The odds of recovery..." She couldn't finish. Couldn't say out loud what she knew to be true, that even if Min-seok survived, he would likely never walk again. The damage was too extensive. "He survived this long because of you." Jae-won glanced at her. "You know that, right? Before you, he'd given up. He was going through the motions, but there was no life in him. You gave him a reason to fight. And now he might die because I distracted him. He might die because Kozlov is a monster who plays dirty." Jae-won's voice was hard. "This isn't your fault, Imani. If anyone's to blame, it's me. I should have secured the location better. Should have anticipated..." He stopped, his jaw clenching. "I failed him. We both did." They sat in silence, two people drowning in guilt and fear, waiting for news that would either save them or destroy them. Hours crawled past. Imani paced the waiting room, unable to sit still, her mind replaying the shooting over and over. Every time she closed her eyes, she saw Min-seok falling, saw the blood spreading across his white shirt. Finally, after what felt like an eternity, Dr. Kim emerged from surgery. His expression was carefully neutral, never a good sign. Imani's heart stopped. He's alive," Dr. Kim said quickly. "The surgery was successful. We removed the bullet and repaired what damage we could." Relief made her dizzy. But the injury was severe, combined with his previous spinal trauma. Dr. Kim paused, choosing his words carefully. It's unlikely he'll regain the mobility he'd been working toward. The realistic prognosis is permanent paralysis from the waist down. The words hit like a physical blow. Imani had known, logically, that this was the likely outcome, but hearing it confirmed made it real in ways she hadn't been prepared for. Can I see him? He's in recovery. Give him an hour to wake up, then you can go in. Dr. Kim placed a hand on her shoulder. Imani, I know you care about him, but you need to prepare yourself. When he realizes what he's lost, it's going to be difficult. She nodded, unable to speak past the lump in her throat. The hour felt like days. Imani changed into clean scrubs, scrubbed Min Seok's blood from her hands, and tried to prepare herself for what came next. How did you tell the man you loved that his worst fear had come true, that he would spend the rest of his life in a wheelchair? When she finally entered his recovery room, Min Seok was awake, staring at the ceiling with an expression of such profound defeat it broke her heart. "Hey," she said softly. His eyes slid to her, and something in them cracked. "You're okay. I'm fine. You saved me." She moved to his bedside, taking his hand. "How are you feeling?" "I can't feel my legs." His voice was flat, emotionless. "I can't feel anything below my waist." Imani's throat tightened. "I know, the doctors. I'm never going to walk again, am I?" He finally looked at her, and the anguish in his eyes was devastating. "Don't lie to me, Imani. I need to hear the truth." She swallowed hard. The damage was extensive. They did everything they could, but no, probably not. Min Seok closed his eyes, a single tear tracking down his temple. "Then it's over. Everything I built, everything I was, it's gone." "That's not true." "It is." He pulled his hand from hers. "I'm useless now. A cripple who can't even protect the woman he loves. Kozlov was right. I'm weak." "Stop it." Imani's voice was sharp. "You are not weak. You took a bullet meant for me. You held on long enough for help to arrive. You survived, Min Seok. That takes strength. Survival isn't enough." His laugh was bitter. "My enemies will see this as their chance to move in. My own people will start questioning my leadership. Everything will fall apart. Then let it fall apart." The words burst out before Imani could stop them. "Let the empire crumble. Let someone else take over the territories and the violence and the danger. You have a chance now, Min Seok, a chance to walk away, to build something different. You don't understand." "I understand perfectly." She grabbed his face, forcing him to look at her. "I understand that the man I fell in love with is more than his power or his organization. I understand that you're brilliant and strategic and capable of so much more than running a crime syndicate. I understand that this could be a beginning, not an ending, if you let it." "What kind of beginning?" His voice was hollow. "I'm a paralyzed ex-gangster with a target on his back. What life is that? One where you don't have to look over your shoulder constantly. Where you can sleep without wondering who's going to betray you. Where you can build something legitimate, something lasting." Her thumbs brushed over his cheekbones, wiping away tears. "A life with me, if you want it." Min Seok stared at her, disbelief and desperate hope warring in his expression. "You want to be with me? Even now? Even knowing I'll never—" He couldn't finish. "I fell in love with your mind, your strength, your determination. Your ability to walk was never part of the equation." Imani leaned down, resting her forehead against his. "I love you, Go Min Seok, all of you, and I'm not going anywhere unless you tell me to leave. I could never tell you to leave." His hands came up to cradle her face, his touch gentle despite the trembling in his fingers. "But you deserve better than a broken man in a wheelchair." "You're not broken. You're healing. There's a difference." She kissed him softly. "And I deserve exactly what I want, which is you for as long as you'll have me. Forever," he whispered against her lips. "I want you forever." Then forever it is. They stayed like that for a long time, foreheads pressed together, breathing in sync. Around them the world continued, but in that moment there was only the two of them, choosing each other despite impossible odds. "I don't know how to do this," Min Seok admitted finally. "How to be this person, someone who isn't defined by power and fear. We'll figure it out together." Imani pulled back enough to meet his eyes. "One day at a time, starting with your recovery, then we can think about what comes next. What if my people won't let me walk away? What if— Then we deal with it together." Her smile was fierce. "You're not alone anymore, Min Seok. You have me, and I'm not nearly as helpless as I look." Despite everything, he laughed. A real laugh, rusty from disuse but genuine. No, you're definitely not helpless. You're terrifying. Good. That'll keep you in line. She kissed him again, deeper this time, pouring all her love and commitment into the connection. When they finally broke apart, Min Seok was smiling, tentative, fragile, but real. Okay, he said softly. Okay, we'll try. We'll do more than try. We'll succeed. Imani settled into the chair beside his bed, taking his hand. Now rest. You've got a long recovery ahead, and I'm going to be insufferable about making you follow doctor's orders. I wouldn't expect anything less. As Min Seok drifted off to sleep, his hand still clasped in hers, Imani made a silent promise. Whatever challenges lay ahead, whatever dangers, whatever obstacles, they would face them together. She'd found her person, and nothing, not even fate itself, was going to take him away from her. The road ahead would be difficult, but for the first time in either of their lives they weren't walking it alone, and that made all the difference. Years passed, measured not in months, but in milestones. Min Seok's transition out of organized crime was neither quick nor easy. It took careful negotiation, strategic compromises, and the kind of political maneuvering that reminded Imani why he'd been such an effective leader. Jae-won took over the Chicago operations, and under his guidance the organization gradually shifted toward more legitimate enterprises. Min Seok discovered he had a gift for business, real business, not the criminal kind. Within 2 years he'd built a consulting firm that specialized in strategic planning and crisis management. Former enemies became clients, drawn by his reputation for brilliant analysis and ruthless efficiency. The wheelchair became just another part of him, like his sharp mind or his intense gaze. He moved through the world with the same authority he'd always possessed, just seated instead of standing, and anyone foolish enough to underestimate him learned their mistake quickly. Imani finished her nurse practitioner certification, then her master's degree. She opened a community health clinic on the south side, providing care to the neighborhood where she'd grown up. Min Seok funded the clinic, his way of giving back to a community he'd once exploited. They married on a crisp October afternoon, surrounded by an unlikely mix of former gang members, medical professionals, and family. Min Seok wore a tailored suit that made him look devastatingly handsome, and when he said "I do," his voice was steady and sure. Imani wore her grandmother's wedding dress, altered to fit her curves, her natural curls crowned with flowers. When she walked down the aisle toward Min Seok, his eyes filled with tears, the first time she'd seen him cry since that night in the hospital. "You're beautiful," he whispered as she reached him. "You're not so bad yourself." Their life together was imperfect and complicated, and absolutely wonderful. They fought over stupid things, his tendency to work too hard, her habit of bringing home stray patients who needed help. They laughed over shared meals of Korean barbecue and soul food, teaching each other the flavors and traditions of their respective cultures. They built something neither had believed possible, a real partnership, grounded in mutual respect and fierce love. On their 3rd anniversary, Imani found Min Seok on their apartment balcony, staring out at the Chicago skyline. She wrapped her arms around him from behind, resting her chin on his shoulder. "Penny, for your thoughts. Just thinking about how different my life is now." He covered her hands with his wedding ring glinting in the fading light. 3 years ago, I was convinced my life was over, that I had nothing left to offer the world. And now? Now I have everything. He turned his head to kiss her softly. A wife I adore. Work that matters. A future I actually want to see. No regrets? Only one. He met her eyes, his expression serious. "I regret all the time I wasted before I met you. All the years I spent chasing power instead of meaning." Imani moved around his chair to sit on his lap, her arms looping around his neck. "Then we won't waste any more time. Deal?" "Deal." He kissed her again, deeper this time. "I love you, Imani Washington Go. I love you too." She rested her forehead against his. "Forever and always." "Forever and always," he echoed. As the sun set over Chicago, painting the sky in shades of gold and crimson, they sat together, two people who'd found each other against impossible odds, who'd chosen love over fear, healing over bitterness, hope over despair. The road hadn't been easy, but it had been worth it, and as Min Seok held his wife close, feeling her heartbeat against his chest, he knew with absolute certainty he was exactly where he was meant to be. Home.